Hey, what's going on, guys? Tyler here, and I'm super excited today to have on the call with me Nate Miyaki. How's it going, Nate?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm
How
doing
you guys
great.
doing out there?
Yeah, man, I'm doing great. I'm so grateful to have you on the call because we're going to talk about some really cool stuff. There's a lot of people who call themselves nutrition experts out there, and there's a lot of things floating around: paleo diet and carbs and intermittent fasting. And Nate, why don't you give us a 50,000-mile view? Who are you, if people don't know, and why should we listen to you about everything nutrition?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the formal stuff is I have a couple certifications in nutrition. I've been doing that for the last like 15 years, working with private clients, working with corporate wellness programs, doing nutrition talks, things like that. I write for a lot of the different magazines, a lot of the like Muscle and Fitness, Men's Fitness, T Nation type stuff. But that's all the boring formal stuff. Really, I think it's just I follow passion and obsession more than credentials, and this is
Right.
this is this is my life, man. It's what I'm into. I've studied nutrition from basically every angle, like you talked about: paleo nutrition, sports nutrition, bodybuilding and fitness nutrition, intermittent fasting protocols. I do have a background in science, so I can sift through kind of what's out there. But I apply it not only to my clients, but also myself. I've competed in bodybuilding, natural bodybuilding, done some fitness modeling stuff, although I'm not that good looking, so that didn't quite work out. But I apply it myself too. So I'm not just a coach or a writer. I'm someone who is an athlete and applies it to my own life as well. So a little bit of practical experience, a little bit of formal experience, and a lot of passion and obsession, I think, is why people might want to try and follow what I say.
That's fantastic, Nate. You bring up a great point there because the people I like to have on the call are the people who practice their stuff on other people and have proof that it works and also follow their passion because there's way too many people out there that either say they're an expert because they're ripped and they did something to just themselves, or they say they're an expert because they helped other people but they don't follow their own advice. What's
Yeah.
your take on kind of like the pseudo gurus in the fitness and nutrition industry these days?
There's a lot of them out there. Yeah, right. I think it's just people are going to follow who they follow, and to
Sure.
me, I've only followed the people who have that combination because, like you
Right.
said, it's my experience. I've been in the field. This has been my one and only career, so I've run across everyone, in competitions and in the gym and stuff, and like you said, there's a lot of athletes who are really great at getting themselves into shape, but some of that is genetic, some of it's drugs, and they really don't know how to coach other people
Sure.
to do the same. And then, like you said, there's a lot of people who they can copy and paste every research abstract in the world into different forms and have great arguments, and the stuff sounds good in a lab, but in a classroom, but it doesn't work in the real world. So I think you have to have that combination
Yeah.
to really be a good coach and to really basically help other people get results. So I think it's the combination. But people get easily caught up in marketing online. So I just say look into people's backgrounds. I mean, you can tell whether someone knows what they're talking about just by just doing a little research. So
Sure.
like I
Sure.
said, I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm also willing to admit I'm not perfect, and my theories have evolved over time, and I think that's a telltale sign right there of someone who doesn't think they know it all, and is constantly trying to learn and get better and evolve and just get better as a coach. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's a great point. Everybody listening to this call should really take your advice there. That's one of the things I've tried to do throughout my life is look to the people who are genuinely the best, not the people with the most certifications or PhD numbers and stuff after the name, and
Right.
learn from them because everybody's accessible this day and age. It's amazing how much information you can get by just, writing some emails, picking up a phone, or, going on Facebook and messaging people. So. All right, man. Well, let's
Yeah.
get to the meat and potatoes, huh? Let's get to the
Let's
meat
do
and
it.
potatoes. So what? How has your theory evolved over the years? Generally speaking, what people want to do is they want to look good naked, right? Most people want,
Right.
want that superficial goal. But oftentimes, what people are doing nowadays is they're teaching them how to become healthier that ultimately reaches that superficial goal at the same time. So what's your philosophy? Where have you come to over the years? What's your general principles? And then we'll kind of dig into each component of it.
Yeah. Overall, and that's kind of been my journey for my own personal education too. And that's another reason to follow us because I'm selfish and vain. I want all these goals myself, so I'm working right alongside with you guys to trying to figure out this mystery, right? So,
Sure.
but yeah, I've tried to combine the best elements of a variety of approaches that are out there to come to that kind of dual goal of optimizing health and body composition at the same time. And actually, it's three goals, and to make it functional and practical and sustainable,
Right.
despite having a busy career and a social life and a family life, and not wanting to become like this obsessive fitness freak, right? So, for me, it was combining what I thought were the best elements of a variety of approaches. So, taking some lessons from paleo nutrition. Predominantly food choices, right? Taking some lessons from even cultural approaches to nutrition in terms of food choices. Then looking at sports nutrition and fitness nutrition more for the numbers and how you can manipulate those to basically achieve any body composition goal that you want. So whether it's building muscle, slashing fat, recompositioning, it all comes down to getting the right numbers based on your physique goals essentially and training levels and so forth. And then what really kind of I think was the key point for me was looking more along the lines at some of the science about meal frequency, diet structure, intermittent fasting, stuff like that, to really make it a practical and sustainable approach for busy professionals. So it was kind of taking elements from all of those and formulating, I guess, a hybrid approach from all of that research.
Sure. No, that's fantastic. So I got that good overhead view. So let's say somebody walks into your office and you're doing some consulting with them and they're overweight and they want to lose weight and they haven't exercised or anything like that. What is the very first tip you give them? What is the very first change you try to invoke in them to allow them to take that first step to achieve that goal?
Yeah, it's really I try to use first thing I do is just try to optimize food choices and just improve. I mean, we know like most of us know that a piece of fruit is better for you than Fruit Loops, but sometimes it takes there's so much confusion out there that it's actually that's how my theories have evolved too. I've gone towards trying to simplify it people more than because 90% of the internet overcomplicates for people. So the first thing I do is I talk about different food templates because they're easy to remember and they're easy to remember and apply. Doesn't mean you're always going to do it, but at least it gives you that knowledge that you can turn to anytime when you get confused about kind of what's healthy and what's not healthy, what's good for fat loss, what's not good for fat loss. So the first thing I do is say, hey, I got a couple different dietary templates I use based on whether you're sedentary or prominently sedentary or only do low intensity activity versus someone who does, as an anaerobic athlete, does high intensity training, kind of like strength training, cross training, the CT workouts that you do, right? So the templates I use are more like along the lines of a paleo approach. Hey, if a caveman ate it, you can eat it. Sure. Cutting out most modern, processed, refined foods and emphasizing animals and plants, basically. And then for anaerobic athletes, I use a slightly different template because I think carbs and starches are important to support anaerobic training, basically. And so I use one of the templates I use is what I call a traditional Japanese village diet, which is basically exactly the same thing as a paleo diet, fish, meats, vegetables, whole fruit, and then adding in a select few starches to support that training. So we keep some of the benefits of paleo, like getting rid of the sugar and gluten-based carbs, yet we add back in some, I've seen it in paleo forms called safe starches, the rice, the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, and so forth to basically support that anaerobic training. So the first thing I do with people is like, hey, here's some simple food templates that cuts through a lot of the bullshit that's out there, basically.
Sure. So let's tackle that a little bit. I want to break that down just a hair. There's two questions I had involved with that. So something that people might be asking themselves, which I hear all the time, and it's hard for them to understand is, but Nate, I'm an athlete. Why can't I eat brown rice? Why do I have to eat white rice, right? So break us down. What's the difference between brown rice and white rice, and why maybe people should lean a little bit towards the white rice rather than the brown rice?
Yeah, that's one that, man, that's online. I've written some articles on that in various spots, and people, it's this controversial topic, which is funny, man. So again, I've studied a lot of paleo nutrition, and the value of paleo nutrition is that it simplifies a lot of some of the more complex details in terms of food choices and just nutrition in general. And so, one of the things that paleo nutrition talks about in terms of cereal grains can be very problematic for human digestion because there's these compounds. One is called phytic acid. They're as a group they're called anti-nutrients, but specifically one is called phytic acid. And in the human body, it's very hard for the human body to digest it. It can block mineral absorption. It can cause a lot of GI distress, water retention, things like that. And so brown rice is like most other of these cereal grains, kind of like gluten and wheat and things like that, where this phytic acid is contained in the bran of the cereal grain. So when you eat brown rice, you're essentially eating this phytic acid, which can be hard on digestion. What's unique about white rice is that the milling of the rice, they actually remove the bran. So when the milling is what changes brown rice to white rice. When you mill it, you remove this phytic acid, and then white rice is basically just pure starch, which is exactly what you want to fuel your anaerobic activity without the toxic compound or the phytic acid. So if you look at any cultures, and beyond just the technicalities of it, if you look at any culture that eats white rice on a daily basis, Chinese, Japanese, Thai, they're all pretty much eating white rice. Whether they know why they're doing it or not is debatable, but people who eat brown rice on a daily basis can really start to develop some digestive problems. So switching over to white rice, if that's your primary starch source, I think is a better call for most people.
Yeah, that seems like some ancient wisdom that kind of got passed down to us that we forget, right? And then the marketing industry goes, wait, we don't have to mill this brown rice. We can just sell it to them straight and call it healthier, right?
Right. And then it's really to me, it's really, and I take a step back when I say, hey, first you got to assess whether you even need rice or not, sure. Right? Like if you're sedentary and you're not doing a ton of anaerobic training, your carbohydrates in your diet need to be a little bit lower. So you probably don't even need any rice, right? Sure. You're going to emphasize more the fruits and the vegetables and things like that. But if you're doing, severe glycogen depleting training, well, you need some starch. And the reason you need starch is not for, vitamins or minerals. You're going to get that from your fruits and your vegetables. Right. Also, you're going to get fiber from that too. Really, the only reason you're eating starch is to get glucose. So the idea is to get that glucose without any of the toxic compounds that can come along with a lot of cereal grains. Your insulin sensitivity is higher, so you can handle starch, no problem there. So even if it's higher on the glycemic index, doesn't really matter. And in that case, that's what I'm saying. Well, first assess whether you need rice or not, and if you do, go for the white rice instead of the brown rice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing, just to kind of notice how it's pure glucose, so it's easily used by your body for the anaerobic activity. Maybe give us a spectrum on glucose versus fructose, Nate.
Yeah, and that's where
we're having some fun. I get to grill him.
I fucking love it, man. This is great. We're getting topics where people really get confused, and that's to me that's why people really get confused about carbohydrates. There's just so many technical details about it, but I really think that's the reason why carbohydrate diets get a bad name in the first place. Is that like 50% of the American diet is basically sugars. Right. So of course, any diet that's compared to that is going to look like a savior or a superstar. So low-carb diets come off looking as the absolute best approach. And they are for certain demographics, like I said, if you're sedentary. But yeah, you get into technical details, like you look at the research, like fructose in concentrated amounts is what causes all the problems, like insulin resistance, a risk factor for type 2 diabetes. So with the refined food industry putting sugar in everything, that's why people really run into problems with carb-based diets. If you switch that to basically pure glucose or starch-based diets, which are just chains of glucose linked together, handle glucose very well and use it if it's highly active. And what I always tell people is, again, go back to those simple templates. If you compared an American diet, traditional American diet, which is again 50% refined sugars, which is a ton of fructose, versus say a Japanese diet, well, now you have a completely different story, which is very low in fructose and high in starch, like we said, rice and potatoes. Well, you look at some of the research pre 1991, before food refining came in there as well. Diabetes and obesity rates were both less than 2% of the population. So what you have now is a completely different story. Is that, hey, if carbs in general were the problem for people, the Japanese would be the fattest, most diabetic people on the planet, which is not the case, right? It's the type of carbs that matter. So that's why you said, what do I start with first? It's always emphasizing food choices first, because then you start to see, well, wow, I can eat some carbs in my diet and I'm not getting fat and I'm not getting, pre-diabetic and insulin resistant. It's really cutting out some of the poor food choices that are causing these problems.
Sure. Yeah, and a quick little side note that's important to note is like the reason why glucose is so important is because it's readily available in your muscles and you can use it instantly, whereas fructose can't be used by the muscels. And so then it really becomes challenging.
Yes.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah. So fructose is metabolized in the liver. Primarily stored as liver glycogen. So it's very limited storage. So once those are full, easily gets converted to body fat. Whereas glucose can be used by any tissue in the body. So, it's including muscles, which muscle glycogen stores are a lot larger than liver glycogen stores. So what you're getting is for an anaerobic athlete, it's just a better fuel source to emphasize the glucose and the starch versus the fructose.
Well, hot damn, Nate, we're dropping some truth bombs, huh?
Damn, fun stuff, man. Hey, what are you gonna do? I love it. We talk forever about this stuff, man.
All right, let's break down one more component of food choices. There's a lot of people talking about gluten. All right, tell us a little bit about gluten. Should everybody avoid it? Is it something that we should all be thinking about? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, my personal approach is I've seen enough of some of the disaster gluten can cause in some people who are allergic to it. I just tend to recommend cutting it out. But I also am very much with all these people coming off as gurus and know-it-alls, like with food choices that are a little more controversial. My honest advice is to test it out and assess it in the real world, because that's where you're going to find the results for you, not what some coaches saying or something like that. It's always more important to test it out in the real world. And see if it works best. I know competitors who eat a ton of gluten in their diets and they're fine and they're great and they do well with it. Personally, me, I don't do well. I mean, I just had a meal the other day, a cheat meal, and it had some cookies and breads and gluten. And man, I was on the toilet the next day all day, and so I just don't do well with it personally. Yeah. So I think there is enough information out there that even if you're not allergic to it, some people are very sensitive to it, right? So you talk to, say, someone with higher level goals and they're a competitor, and they're like, man, I just can't lose this last 5 pounds, and I'm feeling a little bloated and water weight. It's like, well, try eating rice instead of wheat bread and see if that fixes it. And for some it has. So it really just depends on the individual. Sure. But my honest advice with any controversial food choice, dairy is another one that sure. Some people do really well on it, some people don't, is to test it out, cut it out for 2 weeks, see and look how you feel, add it back in, see how you look and feel, and you'll have your answer for you.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a great approach to do it. So just cut it out, and if it works for you, when you bring it back in, then fine. If it doesn't, then you'll know, right?
Yeah, exactly, man. It's kind of just getting back to some simple common sense in this information overload era. It's like you got it.
Well, the other thing, Nate, is that I feel like people want a guru. They want someone to tell them what they need to do. They don't want to take personal responsibility for themselves and say, okay, I've listened to what Nate has to say, what Tyler has to say. Now I'm going to see if that works for me. And if it does, then I'll stick with it. If it doesn't, then I'm going to go find somebody else to listen to. And right. I think that's just a huge problem, is that people aren't taking personal responsibility for their own health, for their own fitness, and they're looking outside of themselves for a guru that's going to help them. And, with so much information these days, they're choosing Nate and then Tyler and then this guy and then this guy and this guy, and they end up doing nothing, right? They get paralysis analysis. How do you fix that with your clients? How do you get people focused?
Yeah, well, I'm also big into philosophy, not to bore the shit out of people, but right. like Bruce Lee, Miyamoto Musashi, warrior philosophy, and both of them came to the same conclusion. Like Bruce Lee's line is, there's no help but self-help. Right. And then Musashi's was kind of like, there's nothing outside of yourself that can make you stronger, faster, or smarter. It's all within. So it's all What's
I
that?
said happier.
Yeah. So it's all kind of it's called kind of the idea like you're saying is people need to take some personal accountability. And I always one of the things too I always do when I'm working with people, I always say, hey, what are you fighting for? Why are you doing this? Is it really to get a six pack, or is it to be healthier so you can play with your kids? Is it to be a more cognitively functional at work and a high cognitive performance at work so you can crush the competition, that type of thing. You usually, other than like a vain meathead like myself, the sort of six pack goals are not enough.
The
People need
whys. Yeah.
people need to really think about why they're doing this. And the flip side of that is when you meet someone whose doctor has laid it out for them and basically like, listen, you're going to die if you don't change your life. All of a sudden, all those diets that failed in the past all start working because they have the right motivation now, right? So really, it's to me, it's diving in a little deeper and saying, hey, what are you really fighting for? And then once you figure that out for people, once you get their real goals, then all of a sudden they're way more likely to take personal accountability, and then their adherence rates go up and their results skyrocket because of that. I also think we're in an age in our industry where there's a lot of coaches out there that are purposely confusing people to make them codependent on their services or whatever. And I think you got to watch out for that. Like I said, be careful who you're learning from, because I know personally some coaches who are purposely like holding back information or confusing people just to get them codependent on them, and that's not a good thing. I hope you learn from me and then go off and live a great life and get all these results that you want, and I can go out and do something different then too.
Right. Yeah, I think the best coaches are the ones that look forward to the day where they can get rid of you, knowing that you understand the concept rather than you depend on them for continued motivation and support and education.
Yeah. I mean, you're always going to need that, continued support and new research comes out and stuff. But there's a difference between that and providing ongoing support versus like purposely like making people codependent on you.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big difference there.
That's pretty dark.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. And I get it. And it makes me skeptical when I'm trying to learn about things in other industries, because I'm like, I see how people twist it, and like when I'm going to learn, say, about business or finance, I'm like, fuck, is someone just like scamming me? You know what I mean? So be careful about who you learn from.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can do a little research and find out, about people. So
yeah. I'm happy you mentioned that deeper why. I have a really interesting story that I share sometimes, which was I used to spend some time training trainers how to train people better. And one of them was asking me I was teaching them about whys, how to get people's whys. And I asked her goal. She wanted to be able to do a one-legged squat. And I kept digging deeper with more whys. Why do you want to be able to do a one-legged squat? What does that serve as a purpose to you? Well, that means to have strong legs. Well, why do you want to have strong legs? Well, I want to have strong legs so I can run faster. Well, why do you want to run faster? Well, I really just want to run a marathon. Well, why do you want to run a marathon? Well, I want to run a marathon so I can do it with my dad because he runs marathons. Well, why do you want to run a marathon with your dad? Because I want to do something fun with my dad. I want to spend more time and foster our relationship. It's like, oh my God, the reason why you want to be able to do a pistol is because you want to have a better relationship with your dad. Not because you want to be able to do a pistol, So let's go ahead and fix that root problem over here, and then we'll come back to the leg strength and everything. So
yeah, and actually, I think it's a very critical step people overlook, right? Because like I said, that's why so many plans, and because they're shitty plans too. But there, so many plans fail because people are doing it for the wrong reason, and then as motivation declines, they give up, things like that. It really is, like I said, it's rarely what you think it is when you dive deeper. It's rarely that superficial goal. There's something deeper there, and then once you find what it is, you won't have a quick fix anymore. You'll have a lifestyle, and there'll be no starting and stopping over. You'll have a lifestyle. Of course, you'll get better and you'll go through different phases, but you'll have a sustainable lifestyle plan when you find that, not a series of quick fixes.
Yeah, that's great. Well, man, we are chatting it up, and we're running out of time fast. So I want to make sure to dig into some more useful info for everybody.
Yeah,
so we've talked about food choices. We've talked about the difference between carbohydrates. Hope we cleared up some thoughts in some people's heads. A little bit about macronutrients there. One of the things that you've been talking about, and a lot of people are talking about these days, intermittent fasting. So Nate,
Yeah.
break it down to us. Why is intermittent fasting useful? Maybe when is intermittent fasting not useful? And how do people know the difference?
Yeah, intermittent fasting is popular, but I tend to focus on the funner part, which is the feasting, right? So people are like, yeah, starving. No, but yeah, no, it's definitely what I think it's done is, and I'll say this is like, as long as you have the right food choices numbers, a variety of diet structures can work. That's the key is the right macronutrients, like we talked about, right food choices. From there, the plan is a little more flexible. And to me, where meal frequency, diet structure, things like intermittent fasting versus the traditional fitness spread is all about what makes your diet the most practical, the most functional, the most sustainable to follow, the easiest to follow, the most enjoyable to follow. And where I think the strength of intermittent fasting is in the real world, when you got a career and a social life and a family life, most people can't do the 6 small meals and starve at night and go to bed dreaming about food. It's just not practical based on our social setup. So to me, I think where intermittent fasting's strength is that it gives people who've kind of failed on that type of structure a viable alternative to get results. Where I don't think it's great is it's now being sold as a magic pill, right? Like as long as you skip breakfast, you can eat whatever the hell you want and junk load on a bunch of crap, and you're going to get great results. And that's just not the truth. It really is a great alternative, but it's not a magic pill. So I think that's where you ask where it's not applicable. It's the people who are trying to use it as the next magic pill, just saying, hey, I'll skip breakfast and then I'll go, eat KFC the rest of the day and get results. But for someone who's a busy professional, who's looking for a plan that makes it more practical in their daily life, I think reducing meal frequency a little bit, perhaps intermittent fasting, and like I said, my core principle is eating the majority of calories and carbs at night. Just gives people a much more enjoyable plan, and then it becomes more of a lifestyle plan, like I said, as opposed to a quick fix diet. So some people who it doesn't always work for, and I make some modifications for, is like maybe performance athletes who are training twice a day or something like that. You do have to make some modifications because it's just a very unique situation. But for 95% of the people out there, maybe train, once a day, 3 to 5 days a week, and who have a real job, I think it's a very good diet structure to follow to make your plan very practical.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned something kind of in that last paragraph that I know a few people probably their ears perked up. Eating all your carbs at night, Nate? How is this possible? I thought we were supposed to eat our carbs in the morning, so we burn them up throughout the day. Let's talk a little bit about that, man.
It's really that's where I fall back onto the science side of me and just said I was afraid to try it too. A lot of the theories first convinced me. It's like, hey, human beings evolved on a fasting, feasting cycle. We were out hunting and eating lighter or fasting the majority of the day while we're hunting and gathering food, and then coming home and having our big feast at night on whatever we caught. And that's when my ears first perked up. I'm like, wow, that actually fucking makes a lot of sense. Right. Like, this whole fitness nutrition thing, but I am skeptical. I'm like, no way. I've just grew up in bodybuilding nutrition, and that's just completely false. And, it's been ingrained in me for 30 years that you eat, six small meals a day and you starve at night. But, really started diving into some of the science of some of the intermittent fasting, and a few studies are just like, they looked at one where people, ate, like I think 80% of their carbs during the day or 80% of their carbs in one meal at night. And the people who followed the nighttime eating pattern, lost more body fat, retained more muscle. And there was, there's several more studies that are out there. And I'm like, you know what? All right, the science is saying it too. It's unbiased science, not science funded by different health food companies. Right. And I said, what? I'm gonna give this a shot because it just sounds too good. And I'll tell you, I'll never go back to any other way of eating again. It just makes it too easy, and the results were just as good, if not better. And the reason and basically, like I said, there's science on how it improves insulin sensitivity, nutrient partitioning to the muscle cells when you kind of basically think of it as two different times. During the day, you're kind of driving your car around, right? You're active, and then you come home and you fill up the tank at night. There's a lot of science supporting it, and like I said, beyond the science, in terms of practicality, this is the one strategy that has helped my clients more than any other in my 15-year career. It's like you work with a busy professional, and they're like, "Wow, you're basically telling me I can eat a little bit lighter during the day, eat some good paleo foods, and then come home and have a big, satiating, satisfying, dinner with like steak and potato or something like that, fish and rice, whatever." They're like, "Wow, I think I can do that." Yeah. Whereas, diets in the past are like, "Oh, fuck, yeah, that's great, Nate. That's your career, but there's no way I can do that." Yeah. It really has, since I switched people over to the structure a couple years back, even people who had failed on like 10 different diets in the past were now getting results. And like I just said, from a practicality standpoint, adherence rates skyrocketed, people's results skyrocketed. And like I said, it just, became a lifestyle plan for a lot of my people who could never find something that worked for them. So it's from the practicality down to the science. It's definitely the approach that I will advocate the rest of my life, basically.
That's fantastic. So this question's for me, and then I got one more for you before I let you go.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm interested in your perspective. So if you're eating the majority of your carbohydrates at nighttime, like you're talking about, what if someone trains in the morning or the afternoon? How do you take advantage of that post-workout window in terms of glycogen loading? Do you follow that, or do you not believe in that?
Yeah, I believe in it somewhat, but I believe in it for different reasons, meaning that to me, the most important thing, anabolic activity, here's the thing about like glycogen restoration, even protein synthesis, anabolic activity takes time post-workout. So the post-workout window, the 3-hour window is a little bit of a myth, meaning that it's really about what you do for building muscle, restoring glycogen reserves. It's really about what you do with your diet over the next 36 to 48 hours, right? Because protein synthesis is elevated for 48 hours. Glycogen restoration can take 24 hours or more. So in terms of anabolic activity, it's really about what you do with your diet as a whole. Where the window is true is that your body can become very catabolic very quickly after a workout, because you depleted both muscle and liver especially liver glycogen stores. So your body's primary goal is to fuel its brain, right? So if it doesn't have glycogen in the liver, it's going to get glucose somehow, trust me. And one of the backup mechanisms is amino acids, right? Yeah. Breaking down muscle tissue and things like that. So to me, the post-workout window is more about being anti-catabolic. Well, you don't need to load hundreds of grams of carbs to become anti-catabolic. You can have a post-workout snack, 25 to 75 grams of carbs, just to make sure you have immediate fuel, and then still have your main meal and your main post-workout meal at night. So regardless of when you train on my plans, you do some things post-workout to be anti-catabolic, but your main meal is still at night with all the starchy the majority of starchy carbohydrates there. So that's why I said I call it intermittent feast, because what you do during the day is a little more flexible. Some people like the more traditional 3 spread. They're like, "Hey, I want to eat breakfast." Like, fine, go ahead. You have a protein-only breakfast. Keep insulin low by not, eating a bunch of refined carbs. But, you can do that. But regardless, in my plans, you're still eating your biggest meal and the majority of your carbs at night. Just, again, because of from the practicality standpoint of it.
Yeah, man. Very cool, man. Very cool information. I appreciate that question was for me. I wanted to know what your take was on that post-workout window. So I got one more question I'd like to ask all of my guests. Obviously, you're very successful in your professional life. You're very successful in your athletic life as well. What's your secret to success, Nate? What's your secret to success?
Honestly, I've been thinking about a lot about this lately. It's really it's so fun. Wow, man, you're reading my mind, man. Just been what's going on in my life. It's authenticity. It's staying true to yourself. I think so many people are miserable in life because they're doing things that they think they should be doing, or that society says that they're supposed to do, or whatever. And to me, I've always been able to be happy, and it's kind of leading to success is always just being true to myself. Like, I'm pursuing my passion, right? Like, I could go probably get a job that I make, a ton more money in, but, I'm passionate about this stuff. So I want to do this stuff every day. So I've made this my career, and sure enough, it's starting to develop and grow and things like that. And I really think it is just staying true to yourself and doing the things that are right in your gut, not what anyone else says you have to do. And I think that ultimately leads to success as a side effect, not necessarily as a goal. So I think it's authenticity, man. Chase stuff that out there that you're passionate about, and good things will come from it.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I love that. I think that with the advent of the internet and the information age, that this authenticity, this transparency, it's going to show on these false gurus we talked about at the beginning of this. There's no way they can stay in business. It's just not going to work anymore. You got to be real.
I agree. Those people will be weeded out very quick because people are just becoming smarter as consumers as well, and I think that's a good thing. I think they'll start, some of the shysters out there will start to fall off, and you'll see true experts kind of rise to the top.
Sure.
And true, and just passionate people. You know what I mean? Passionate people are going to go continue learning and get better. So even if you're not the greatest now, you'll continue climbing that ladder because you're never going to stop, right? So. Right. That's why I said that's the only way to be successful. I think is to pursue something you're passionate about, because you won't do everything necessary to continue growing and climbing the ladder if you're not passionate about something. It's just too hard. There's too much competition these days. So you really have to choose something that you're passionate about to continue growing and become successful, I think.
Well, that's fantastic, Nate. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your new book coming out? We talked a lot about the principles here, but you got a project that you've been working on for a while that's literally coming out very, very soon.
Yeah, it's definitely a book. It's definitely a product, but it's way more than that. It's basically 15 years of my research and my experience training people, coaching people, my own athletic experience, and basically people were like, hey, you got some great stuff out there. You got some good articles. You've been good information. We got to get this all in one spot, baby, and put it out there. So it's really a compilation of all that stuff put into one product. It's on the feast structure we were talking about. Feast your fat away is what it's called, and it really goes into all those topics in more detail about why carbs are good for some people, not for others. What are the best food choices? What are some good eating templates? Why and how you can set up your diet to be more practicable. So maybe a reduced meal frequency and eating majority of calories and carbs at night. Some modifications for people who train based on when they train. So what to do when you work out in the morning versus afternoon versus evening. We just try to put everything that we could into it, and a lot of it was refinements of earlier stuff that I put out and got a ton of questions about, and try to once you start going through them, they're like there's the most common ones, right? So it really was answering those and just refining the approach. And like I said, it's been 15 years to get to this point, and I think I've really after that amount of time got something that's pretty awesome, and I think it is, and the people who use it are getting fantastic results. So it's really addresses everything in the diet and nutrition industry, and then gives people. And I focus on the practical application strategy. So there's science there to support it, but really I think my goal is to give people actionable strategies that they can go out and take and use and get great results in the real world. So that's really what we tried to focus on.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll be posting a link. So Nate, thank you so much, brother. Thank you for being on the call.
Thanks for having me, man. And I hope sometimes I ramble. I hope some good information came out there, and I hope you guys benefit from it.
All right, brother. Thanks so much.